So most dangerous of all, closing in this, the legislation that will include this cap and trade scheme will not be a deep cut at first. This is what we believe is the case from comments both private and published. There's a paper by Nigel Purvis, who is a Clinton Gore administration official, published for the Brookings Institution and Resources for the Future. And it calls on the Obama administration to reclassify the Kyoto Protocol, the global treaty covering 34 countries, Iceland, Luxembourg, Belgium, Slovenia, Slovakia, not China, India, Mexico, South Korea, Indonesia, Brazil, and so on, small players. Reclassify it as an executive agreement like Lend-Lease or Yalta, so that we get around the Senate ratification requirement of 2/3 vote. Under an executive agreement, and it appears from private and public comments of Obama transition officials, that they have adopted this plan. They will present this bill to Congress, a slight cap and trade cut. The second title of the bill sets forth negotiating guidelines with, quote, no international preconditions. You may have heard that before. And then a promise to ratify implementing legislation of this executive agreement. And what happens is, just like Trade Promotion Authority, NAFTA, this is called Climate Protection Authority. And what they do is they bring back an agreement for a no amendment, no filibuster, up or down, simple majority vote in both houses. And voila, as they say at the UN, you have gotten rid of the Article 2, Section 2 requirement for 2/3 vote of the Senate. So that's the most pernicious angle about this. But even if they decide that stove's too hot, because we ring the alarm early, you've got to remember, cap and trade is rationing. Nothing good can come of it. Even the rent seekers are viewing only just what they can see in the horizon, because ultimately a cap is a cap and it is ultimately decreasing. It has to go down to near zero. No one else is doing it, neither should we.
Unfortunately, the news on the social conservative front is about as encouraging as what we've heard so far, what we're going to see in an Obama administration. Ultimately, you know, the one issue that overrides everything that I think social conservatives are most concerned with is the issue of judges, and the potential that between 2 and 3 Supreme Court justices could be replaced during an Obama administration. And obviously, if the Senate is as strongly Democratic as it looks like it's going to be, he can get through judges that would be as, you know, far left as Ginsburg or anybody else has ever been on the court. So there's little hope in that, but it's also the lower courts, the appeals courts, like the Fourth Circuit, that has so many openings and that is already starting to you know, change in ideology. And that doesn't just affect social conservative issues. That affects the gun issue. That affects a lot of these issues that we're talking about this morning, and just how much an Obama administration and a Democrat Congress can accomplish. And one of the issues that's key to this, I think, that we don't talk about a lot more, because unfortunately we may be seeing the last gasps of breath of that fascinating idea of federalism, that states actually have the right to pass their own laws. And in one particular area that social conservatives are obviously concerned with, the area of life, Obama is a supporter of the Freedom of Choice Act, and said during the campaign and recently that his very first act as president would be to sign the Freedom of Choice Act. Apparently that is some type of economic stimulus package, because I thought the economy was the most important issue. What the Freedom of Choice Act essentially does is roll back state laws in the area of abortion. In Virginia, we have a parental consent law, we have an informed consent law, we have a ban on partial birth abortion that's still in the courts, but all of those would essentially be wiped off the books by the Freedom of Choice Act. And eliminate the power of the state legislature, in essence, to regulate abortion in the United States. It would become just a federal issue. We would have, at some point, state legislatures whose only duty is to tax and spend. They would not really have much power outside of that to do anything, because this whole concept of any type of law from the state level would be in jeopardy. And if the courts are stacked the way they could be under an Obama presidency, obviously that's going to maintain itself. Other things that he's looking at as far as the abortion issue, and it's interesting to note, as social conservatives like myself are you know, obviously, it's our fault that McCain lost, if you haven't read in the paper. And it's our fault that the Republicans are losing everywhere because they're so pro-life and so pro-marriage, which I'm still trying to find them. But apparently that's true. And how many ads you saw during the presidential campaign on the issue of abortion or marriage in Virginia or any other states other than the places where the marriage amendments won on the ballot, like the 3 states that it was on, including California. So it must be a very, very divisive issue. But there are other abortion issues that Obama is going to be, he's already promised Planned Parenthood the world, reversal of the Mexico City policy, federal funding of abortion, reversal of President Bush's ban on furthering federal funding of embryonic stem cell research. There is no ban on embryonic stem cell research or federal funding of it. It's just an expansion of it that was banned. He's talking about reversing that. Planned Parenthood already gets about $330 million a year in federal and state funding. That's likely to go up. I know, $100 billion here, $100 billion there isn't a big deal, or $100 million there. But you know, in our world, that's a lot of money. They will definitely benefit from this. The issue of marriage, he has said that he would like, Obama is great. He believes marriage should be defined as being one man and one woman, but he's against all the state marriage amendments, and he wants to repeal the Defense of Marriage Act in federal law that says that marriage is defined as one man and one woman. So he may believe it, but in law he wants to eliminate, and that again is an issue that protects state law. Defense of Marriage Act helps allow states to define marriage themselves. He wants to reverse that. Down the line, free speech issues and religious liberty issues. Things like adding sexual orientation to hate crimes, which is a free speech issue for people, especially pastors and churches, who essentially could speak out on what they believe theologically is a sin, homosexuality. Someone in their church goes up and beats up a gay person, the pastor is then punished for inciting a hate crime. Those type of things are possible, and we've seen in other countries where hate crimes has expanded in this way. Fairness doctrine, obviously something we've all been concerned about, and being able to actually have our opinions in public. And for organizations that are nonprofits, 501c3s, I think that's something we haven't been talking about. And the fact that the IRS is going to be emboldened to go after C3s more and more that are involved in the political area. Whether we don't endorse candidates or anything like that, but they're going to draw those lines very, very strictly, and I think a lot of things that nonprofits are able to do now are going to be affected by an Obama administration. I don't think the IRS is going to be our friend in a lot of different ways, and it's not just taxation, but it's in free speech issues as well. And then finally, obviously, the tax and budget issue, which I think we've talked about and heard about a lot here, is just the concern families have about what's going to happen with their taxes and how bad this is going to be and what effect it's going to have on their jobs. It's great to promise a middle-class family a tax cut if they actually have an income, okay? If they actually can keep their job and benefit from that tax cut. But if the corporate tax hikes go up and jobs continue to be lost, then they're not going to get a middle-class tax hike because they're not going to have a job to get one. So all of these things, I think, are concerns. The Obama administration did not talk about these, or the Obama campaign did not talk about these issues, except for when they were talking to their base behind closed doors. And it wasn't talked about really generally throughout the election, but they're going to be, I think they're going to make the Clinton administration look moderate on a lot of these issues.